projects while we do that. So our very first project is called a silhouette project. And what you're going to be doing is going into the Files section, which is on the left-hand side of the navigation. You're going to go into Files and you're going to go into a folder called Silhouette. And in the Silhouette folder, you're going to see all kinds of drawings. Come again?
Where it says Saturday next to it.
It says Saturday next to it?
Where it says they created, they modified.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And then in that folder, you can see that there's all sorts of drawings to choose from. And this is kind of what we're talking about with Vector, creating things from scratch. Oftentimes you'll have a reference image, something that you draw yourself, something that you get from the internet even, and you're going to be creating a graphic on top of it. And what we're going to be learning about today is the pen tool, which is the #1 tool for creating graphics from scratch. There's a lot of other ones. There's the shape tool, there's like pencil tool, there's paintbrush tool, but your pen tool is really going to be where you're going to be able to get very specific and very intricate with curves and lines and all of that. So there's a lot here to choose from. Some of them have different challenges than other ones, but you're going to pick 3 of them. And what we're going to learn today is what the techniques that you'll be using for the next few classes. There's this one, there's the next one, which we also have a lecture for that one and an in-class assignment, but that's really quick. And then we have one more after that. So there's 3 work days. It will take you a second to get over the learning curve and get it right. If you took my Pixel class, you're already familiar with this and the frustrations of it, and you'll probably get the hang of it a lot sooner. Okay, so that's the file with all of them in it. And if we go to the assignment itself, you can just see more info on the project. You're going to pick 3 of them. You're going to be adding color to it. So it's not just going to be the silhouette that it comes with.
Like a black color.
Well, no, you want to pick a different color than black. You can pick any color. But I'll show you how to do that in today's lecture. You really want to take your time with this. That's why I added so many different work days for it, because not only is it sort of hard to get over that learning curve hump, but there's just a lot to it. It's like very intricate. You want to go slow with it. You want to make sure that all of your curves are smooth. They don't look rough and kinky. You want to really check the guidelines, right? You want to look into the details. You want to make sure that you're really challenging yourself with this. Because once you have this foundational tool, like the rest of the class is going to go really well for you. All right. Any questions on that? Can y'all remind me who's a first-time student here? First semester? Okay. So we can talk about how to upload it to Canvas and all of that probably next class. We'll do that once we get a little bit closer to that. Is anyone still logging into Illustrator? Okay. Cool. And get started. And for those of you still logging into Illustrator, just try to multitask with that. And we have someone come and fix the lights really soon. Right now it's a little washed out and I apologize about that, but it's not going to be like that all semester. All right, so the very first thing you're going to do is create a new file. And when you pull up the new file screen, it's going to ask you all sorts of parameters to it. You want to change the width and the height. And if we pull up our projects, it's 8.5 by 11. So you're going to change the width to 8.5. You're going to change the height to 11. You want to make sure that it's in inches. And then you would click create.
PT?
No, inches.
Oh,
PT is points, which is really small.
oh.
So y'all should all have a brand new composition.
Now
Yeah, 8.5 by 11. Okay, so over here on our left, this is the toolbar. This is what we're gonna keep coming back to anytime we wanna move something around, anytime we wanna switch to different tools that we're working with. Sometimes the tool we want is the pen tool. That's what we're gonna be learning today. Sometimes the tool we want is the selection tool or the direct select tool. All of that's gonna be over here on this side. Our layers panel is where all of our shapes are gonna show up. We are gonna have them obviously show up on the main composition right here, but there's also gonna be tiny copies of them over here. And this is really good for organization, layering them. So just like the name, like whatever's on top will be at the very top of the list. And so let's say we wanna move something on top of another shape. We can do that in the layers panel by moving it up the list. Right. So if everyone could go to their pen tool, which is right here, and I'll sort of get y'all to this next stage and I'll walk around. Anyone else that's having trouble logging in, I'll help you once I get people going with these next few stages. But if you're still trying to log in, just try to pay attention to this part by looking up on the screen. All right, so the pen tool is how we're gonna be creating these shapes. And at the beginning of this demo, I'm not gonna use a reference image. I'm gonna bring that in later. But just to show y'all how the pen tool works, it's a series of clicks. So you're moving your mouse out in space on the page and you're making a series of clicks. The number one rule with this is you always want to connect it back to the very beginning. And when you do that, you'll see a little pink word pop up that says anchor. And that's your shape. You can color it. You can change so many things about it. You can go to your move tool and you can move it around. But I want y'all to play around with that. And then I also want y'all to, after you're done with that, actually, let's do that first. So make a closed shape and change the color of it. And again, you're just making a series of clicks and changing the color.
Use that paint tool or?
Fills me up with stress,
Oh, okay, good.
frustration, and rage. It's hard to control my rage. Same problem we're having. I think class last night. Same exact.
You can make anything.
Oh. I'm just
Just
struggling.
connect it, yeah, just connect it together. Click and then click and click, click, and it's gonna bring it together.
My page just went all the way down. How do I bring it all the way down? Yeah. I'm trying to fix my shape and this happened. Oh. Zoom in a little bit. A little bit more.
Does anyone need help with getting to this stage? So that's creating a shape with no curves. And what some of you already found out sort of accidentally is how to create curves. And honestly, that's what the pen tool is best for, is creating curves. So if y'all would look up on the screen, I'll show y'all the best way to create curves is to click and drag. And as you click and drag, your handle's getting longer and you're able to change the direction of it. And if I go out again, and if y'all aren't looking up here, I promise you, you will not know how to do this intuitively. You go out here and you click and drag again. Unless you've already know how to do this. So you can see by me clicking and dragging and moving around the shape, I'm creating a blob. Okay, so I'm gonna go over that one more time and then I'm gonna ask y'all to try to do it yourself. So I'm in my pen tool, and instead of making a series of clicks, which would all be straight edges, I'm clicking and dragging. It's creating handles, and those handles are showing me the direction my curve's gonna go and how long my curve's gonna be. So I'm gonna go out, and before I even make my other click and drag, I can kind of see what it's gonna look like, almost. You know what I mean? Okay, so I'm able to click and drag. Before I let go, I'm really trying to get this accurate. Like I'm really trying to see where this shape is gonna land. I'm gonna click and drag out here, click and drag out here, click and drag. And I'm going all the way around my shape to create a blob. Okay, so everyone try to make a colored blob. Any color that you want. Okay, so now that you have your blob or your heart or whatever shape you decided to make, remember that over here on the toolbar, you've got your selection tool up at the top, and you've got your direct select tool right underneath it. Your selection tool is going to allow you to move around the shape. It's going to allow you to scale the shape. So if you click on the shape, you can see there's a bounding box out to the side. If you click and drag while holding down Shift, it's going to scale your shape smaller or bigger. If you don't hold down Shift, it's going to scale it out of proportion, which isn't really ideal. So you'll want to hold down Shift when you scale it. You can also move it around the page. Right, so that's just very basic 101 stuff. It's just knowing where your selection tool is and how to use it. If you want to delete it, you can always select it and then hit delete, which I don't want to do. So I will undo that with Command Z. And I know this is a lot of information, but this is stuff you'll just be coming back to over and over. So you'll definitely catch on to undo, delete, moving around, right? This is just very basic, the basic stuff that you come back to. Something I want to point your direction to right now is direct select tool. So that's right under your selection tool. It's the mouse right underneath it. And when you do that, the line around your shape looks a little bit different. It now has all of these different points on it that I can double click on, or click is all I had to do. And I can change the handles. I can move them around. And this is really good for fine-tuning stuff. So for this project, you'll have very specific shapes that you have as reference images. like a boat or what have you. And so you're gonna go around it with the pen tool and you're gonna try to get that shape exact. But afterwards, you're gonna wanna come in and do stuff like this of just like moving things in closer, further away, changing the handle so the curve is a little bit different. So take a few seconds to try to get acquainted with that. And again, you're in the direct select tool and you're clicking on these anchor points to move them around and change the handle of them. And you might find that you create an entirely different shape than you started with just by doing that. Yep.
Got a whale going on.
I have a hand grenade of sorts. Or a gummy bear, a melted gummy bear.
She got it. It's a state.
Yeah.
Need to know is adding anchor points and deleting anchor points. So if you go to your pen tool, there's the pen tool, obviously, but if you click and you hold down your left mouse key, there's another drop-down menu that comes up. So you'll see the anchor point tool. And sometimes there'll be the add and the delete. On my computer, for whatever reason, I have to go into the sub menu and click it, which I'm gonna do right now. But if you see that there, then that's good news. Otherwise, if you don't see add anchor point or delete anchor point, you can go into the sub menu by clicking on these 3 dots at the very bottom of your toolbar. And what we're looking for is the icon that's got the pen head, and it's either a plus or a minus. That's add and delete. So I'm just gonna drag those into my toolbar. I wish they were already there. They used to be. So again, you're just adding anchor point and deleting anchor point. You're putting that in your toolbar so you can access it. And once I do that, I'm able to, just like the name says, I'm able to add an anchor point onto the path. And I'm also able to delete anchor points that already exist. So I'll give y'all a second to get caught up with that and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so as y'all probably saw, whenever you deleted an anchor point, it changes the shape really drastically. And honestly, the time that you would use delete anchor point is whenever there's too many anchor points, right? If your curve looks kind of kinky, like there's a lot of kinks in it and it's not smooth, that's whenever you would delete anchor point mostly. Adding anchor point is pretty obvious too, or pretty obvious, I think, is whenever you just like don't have enough shape, right? And you want to just have a little more shape built out. That's when you would add anchor point. Okay. The last thing I want to go over before we add our reference image and really start working on the project is the anchor point tool. So that's should be in y'all's drop-down menu by default. If you click on the anchor point tool, you can see that what it does is just creates handles. So if you were to create an anchor point by just clicking and not clicking and dragging, you wouldn't have handles. And so you can always add them back with add anchor point tool or anchor point tool. Okay, so I know some of you were still wanting a little bit of help with just how the pen tool works in general. And so I'm gonna go over that again, but I'm gonna do it this time with a reference image. So that way, if y'all already feel confident with this, you can go ahead and start on your project. And if you don't, this will be more practice. So what we're gonna do next is go to Canvas and grab one of the files. So the one I'll do the demo on is this beater file. So if y'all wanna follow along with the demo specifically, I would just download this beater file.
Do we save this or let it go?
Oh, no, you don't have to save it unless you think it's your masterpiece and you want to keep it forever.
Wow. I'm saving mine.
Okay. So go ahead and download that from Canvas, and it's gonna go to your downloads folder.
I'll call it Lost Masterpiece.
And you can just click and drag that onto your Illustrator file. So I'll wait for everyone a little bit more attention. That way we don't have to like repeat ourselves too much. But I want y'all to notice that whenever you put in the reference image, the layers panel changes a little bit. So now if you drop down the layers panel, you can see that there's this reference image over here. And what I think is really important to do is to lock it. So in the little space, there's a little eyeball, which you can click on that. It makes it appear and disappear. Right next to the eyeball, click the lock. That's
On the image itself or the back, the plain background? Like path or group?
Oh, I'm just the top layer. All of it.
Oh, so just here, wow.
Right next to it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and once you lock it, you're gonna create a new layer on top of it. So you're gonna add a layer, which is at the bottom right. There's a little plus sign for create new layer. And that's gonna be what you're creating your work with. So this was a really important thing, right? You wanna make sure your reference image is locked. You always wanna do that. And then you wanna create a new layer that's different than your reference image. Okay. Y'all are all good? Okay, so let's get back into the pen tool. And if you're unclear about how to use it and it still feels weird, this will be a good review. And otherwise, if you feel good, you can kind of just start working on your project now.
The curve one, though. Yeah.
The curve one, okay.
Awesome.
So the most important thing I like to think about is you want to make as few anchor points as possible. So if I'm looking at this right here at the very top of the beater and I can see that it's a curve, I don't want all these little anchor points around. Like those are going to be like little kinks in it, right? So I'm going to start right here. And again, it's good to have a color to fill it in. So maybe I'll actually start there. I'll go down to this square at the bottom of the toolbar and I'll change my color to something like red. And that way, when I click and drag, I can see that it's creating a little bit of a shape so far. And what I'm really doing is trying to follow the outline of it. So it's really tedious. It takes a long time, but it's gonna look really good. So what I'm gonna do along the way is I'm gonna have to be changing my handles, right? Because right now, if I were to click and drag, which, you know, that's not so bad, but it's a little bit off of where I need it to be. So y'all see that? Okay, so I'm gonna undo that. And to change my handle, I'm gonna hold down the Alt key. You see, I get my little anchor point tool. I'm gonna make my handle shorter. And that looks a lot better. So I'm gonna go down here, click and drag. My Alt key, shorten my handle. Click and drag. And I'm kind of just doing the best I can to go around. Now, someone asked a really good question of how to change the opacity. And that's a really good thing to do while you're making this shape, because you can see that while I'm not filling it in, it's covering up too much of the original. So what I would do is go into properties change my opacity to like 70 or something. And that way, as I'm going around and adjusting these handles,
See where you're at.
I can see exactly where I'm at. And so I don't expect this to be anything less than frustrating. I know it really was for my first time. But a lot of this is going to be trial and error, probably playing back this lecture when you get home, and then just trying in class based on what you know now and asking me questions to clear up any technical concerns. But two things to keep in mind is you want to do as few anchor points as possible, and you want to always close your shape. Another thing to keep in mind is clicking and dragging is permanent, right? So don't try to like figure it out by clicking and dragging, like kind of know what you want to do, or else you'll end up with a lot of chaos. You'll end up with like that.
Sure.
Okay, so everyone try that and we'll go from there.
Love it.
Yes, I'm here for questions.